Hello, everybody. Again, thank you for tuning in and welcome back to Let's Talk Ball. This is Brian Hanley, Big B. I appreciate you guys tuning in each week. We are still having a ton of fun putting these things out there each week for you guys. Going to be looking for some topics. Going to be reaching out to everybody on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, looking for some topics. But today we're going to talk about some stuff that has been covered pretty much everywhere, and that's bust. What goes into somebody being a bust? Now, again, before we go off the deep end with this, let's say, again, we're taking it all relative to comparing them to professional athletes. We're not going to compare these guys, to the run-of-the-mill guy who played in high school. So clearly those guys are going to be better. But like I said, we're going to compare them to each other. And I think we all are intelligent enough to know. Let's compare them to each athletes and talk about those being bust and why they're bust. That's what we're going to kind of dive into. Kind of maybe figure out what the differences are. And there's differences between each sports. So let's dive in. Let's figure it out. And let's talk ball.
Broken up by Tatum. Tipped off. Rachel Harris has it. Here's Jordan. Yes. Secretariat has opened a 22-length lead. Fly ball deep left field. Yes, there she goes. Touchdown. He did what? Yes. LeBron James. It is a grand salami. Bo Jackson unloads on this one. Touchdown. No. There's nothing real in the world anymore. No. Mike Jones made the tackle.
Wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick you.
Ortiz in the deep right field. Down goes Frazier. He is Mr. November. Touchdown Titans. There are no flags. Curry for the lead. Big time, perfect. Woo!
Okay. First thing is, let's talk Major Leagues. Now, Major League Baseball, the bust can go, it's a wide range. Because in baseball, they weed you out. It is not something to where, a guy comes in and he's a high school phenom and he's playing and he's having a ton of success. In baseball, they put you through the ringer. You've got to be, it's an exceptional person to go through the minors and to go through what you have to go through to get to the major leagues. It's not an easy thing. So in Major League Baseball, busts is a little bit more relative because what you see there is guys that flame out before they even get to the majors. Guys that get huge signing bonuses, playing, and it's based all on high school, or maybe it's all on college or junior college, and then they don't make it. Or if they do, they play like a year and they're done. So there's a big difference between Major League Baseball and the other sports, because like I said, when they weed you out, and they will, and in my opinion, I believe that's what they try to do. They try to, because it's not a physical demanding sport. And when I say physical, I'm talking about collisions. There's no contact. It's not a collision sport like basketball, and definitely not like football. So this is their weeding out. This is how they weed you out. The mental toughness. And they get rid of plenty of guys. And people can look at it, two or three different ways. But for me, I just believe if you're not going to make it as a top flight baseball player, you're never going to make it to the major leagues. I don't believe that, hey, you get to the majors and then, oh, well, he stunk there. You don't really see, you see guys that aren't as good, but you, for the most part, bust. And what we classify as an actual bust, those guys never even make it. And that's the difference between baseball and the other sports. Those guys don't make it. And, I'm not really going to get into who and what. I think for the most part, if you're listening to podcasts and you follow sports, you know who and what are bust. Like I said, baseball's a little different. Baseball weeds you out. They get into you mentally. And can you take it? Taking bus rides for 10 hours and then going and playing and then taking another bus ride 13 hours going somewhere and playing. I mean, they will weed you out. And I think that's how they separate the good from the bad. And those are the bust for that particular sport. Now let's move on. Now we're talking about basketball. Basketball, totally different. When you think about basketball and the bust that happened in basketball, especially nowadays, this is 2019. Now it's all about potential. Guys get drafted. Everything is about potential. And they're so young. Now, again, it's another mental aspect with guys getting weeded out. Because when they do get weeded out in the mental aspect, it's because they're not tough enough to make the transition. It's not that they don't have the physical ability. They're just not mentally able to do it. And that mental part translates over into the physical aspect. And what I mean by the difference between baseball and basketball is in baseball, they mentally get rid of you by putting you through the minors. And can you take it? Can you succeed having to go through all the trials and tribulations that they put you through? And what I mean by that is all the travel and the ups and downs of the travel, not always having the best equipment and things of that nature. In basketball, you're going to have the best of everything. You are going to have the best of everything. Now, I'm not talking about G League, or going overseas or anything. I'm talking about if you are in the NBA. There is no minors. The minors is college basketball. You can say that the G League is this. I go, but if you're in the G League, that's because you weren't good enough. And that's totally different. In baseball, being in the minors does not mean that you are not good enough. There's where the big difference is. There's plenty of guys in the minors. I mean, heck, when guys do rehab, they send you to 2A to AA ball because AA ball, that's where the ball players are. AAA, those guys are there for life. AAA guys, I mean, you might have a guy that's 19, 20, 21 years old that skips by AAA and might be there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I go, but for the most part, you're AA and then you come up. AAA is a lot of lifers that aren't good enough to get to the majors. Basketball, and taking it back to basketball, the G League is because you're not good enough. Simple as put. You're just not good enough. And so we can't compare. We're not going to be able to compare the two as far as minor league baseball versus the G League and basketball. It's not a comparison. Not even close to a true comparison. Now this, in basketball, when I say you're not good enough, there's guys that have the physical ability but can't hack it mentally. And when I mean they can't hack it mentally is they just can't put it all together. Now let's talk about that for a minute. What I mean they can't put it all together, you have the physical abilities. You can shoot, pass, run, jump, rebound. But you're also playing against grown men. You've also probably have been the best player on your team your whole life. And now you're not. And again, you have the best of everything. Basketball, you're not taking anything. You're staying in the best hotels. You have the access to the best trainers, best coaching. Everything is first class. And there have been plenty of busts. Now, let's take a deeper dive into a bust as far as basketball. A lot of people say, hey, Sam Bowie, he was the biggest bust ever. I mean, they drafted him ahead of Michael Jordan. I mean, come on. He's got to be the biggest bust. What are you talking about? No, it doesn't mean that. And first of all, and I want to clarify, Sam Bowie played for the University of Kentucky. There's not many things in this world that I hate, because hate is a strong word. I hate the University of Kentucky. I hate everything about it. I hate where it is. I hate their fans. I hate everything about them. And if I'm saying that Sam Bowie is not a true bust, do you realize the pain and agony that I go through even saying something like that? Because he is he is Kentucky true and true. I mean, it just makes me ill to even say it. Let's move on. I digress. So let's move on. Sam Bowie's not a true bust. The reason being is because it was physical. And when I mean physical, it's because he was hurt. If you actually go back and look at his numbers, he wasn't a bad basketball player when he played. I mean, because if you want to say that he's a bust, you could say that Bill Walton was too. Now, I know what you're saying. Oh, Brian, what are you talking about? Bill Walton's one of the greatest big men to ever play the game. And he is. But how many good, successful years did Bill Walton even play in the NBA? I mean, how many actually were there? I mean, there wasn't 10. There wasn't even 8. I mean, he didn't play all these years because he was hurt. Sam Bowie was the same way. He got hurt. And he just wasn't physically able to do it. You could say the same thing about Greg Oden. Greg Oden could play. But physically, the body just would not allow it. That, to me, is not a bust. When your body breaks down, that's not a bust. It's when you're not good enough to play, that's when the bust comes in. But just because your body breaks down, I mean, that's hard to, it's hard to say that you're a bust. I mean, nobody's calling Gale Sayers a bust. I mean, Gale Sayers in football, he broke down all the time. I mean, how many knee surgeries he had? I mean, he was a shell of himself, of what he could have been. But nobody says that he's a bust. So you got to give those guys the same thing. You can't just say you're a bust because your career was cut short or marred or whatever because of injury. You can't do that. That's not fair. And again, there's nothing more in life that I would love to do than to badmouth somebody from the University of Kentucky. I would badmouth you forever. Forever. Because I can't stand them. But I'm not going to do that because that wouldn't be the right thing to do. Because it's not true. So let's talk about what it actually is a bust. There's plenty of guys that just weren't good. I mean, the one that comes to mind, I know we're not necessarily going to dive into players, but just to kind of give you the example would be, Chris Washburn. Anybody look up Chris Washburn, and then that would be your true definition of a bust. Drafted third, 6'11", can do it all. Could not figure it out in the NBA. Just couldn't figure it out. And he was a player. I mean, he wasn't some run-of-the-mill, bum off the street, average guy. Like, for instance, Anthony Bennett that the Cavs drafted number 1. That had no business being the number 1 pick. I mean, there were 20 guys that you could have drafted ahead of him. You can't fault him for being a bust. He was drafted ahead of where he was supposed to be. And that's another part of this. But you can't just say that, he was a bust because of drafting error. I mean, that's not his fault that he was drafted way ahead of where he's supposed to be. Chris Washburn was not. Chris Washburn could have been drafted first. And again, not a bum. 6'11", could do it all, and yet just could not figure it out. Couldn't put it together. Just couldn't put it together. Unbelievable. That's what I'm talking about as far as a bust. You got all the tools, you got the whole package, and yet you cannot get it done. Now, why is that? Like kind of what I said before, a lot of guys, they can't figure out or can't get used to not being the best guy on their team. They can't get past of, hey, there's other guys just as good as me. Oh, there's guys better than me. And they can't get past that because they've been the best their entire life. And they can't figure out, you know what? It's okay if I'm not actually the best guy. I'm still good and I can, it's all part of the mental makeup. It's all part of people's mental makeup. You know, you wouldn't think that it would be. You would think that it's all physical. Nope. Not all physical. Not even remotely all physical. It's really, really, when you dive into it and you look at it, it's very, very interesting. It's very interesting. I like it. It's really more mental than it is physical when it comes to these busts. You know, clearly guys can play. Otherwise, they wouldn't be getting drafted as high as they are. But then for the reasons that they can't figure it out, there's just so many guys just can't figure it out. And it's sad. I mean, it really is sad when you think about it. But because that's the whole thing. I mean, guys, their whole life are wanting to try to be this and try to be that. And then their entire life, that's what they have built this up. And then all of a sudden, it comes to a crashing halt. Just devastating halt. It's sad. It's sad. So now let's move on, obviously, to the big one. NFL. The NFL busts are all physical related. Now, that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it, and you're never going to change it. Now, you can say, oh, Brian, what are you talking about? It's just like the NBA. Oh, they can't figure it out mentally. So, no. Nope. Here's the reason why. Quarterback. Those are always going to be the biggest bust. Jamarcus Russell. The reason that he was a bust is because he wouldn't put in the work. You know, he did all the things necessary pre-draft to be able to figure it out. For instance, he was smart enough to be able to figure it out. You know, because you do all these interviews. You go through the interview. You go through the testing. You know, they put you on the whiteboard. Now, if you're going to try to tell me that an NFL franchise quarterbacks are just horrible in the classroom and you're going to draft them first anyway, I don't believe that happens. I know that there are dumb men. I know the Oakland Raiders have just been dumb forever, and they just are. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. Their front office has just been bad, and I get that part of it. But at the same time, you can't tell me that they're not drafting, they're not doing at least that part of the homework. I mean, come on. At least doing that part of the homework. And if guys can't figure it out on that level, if they can't figure that part of it out, I'm talking about the players, if they can't figure out classroom stuff, there's no way that they're going to be taking those guys early. They're just not going to do that. So it's a physical thing. Football, it's physical. You can't get it done. Now, I know what you're saying, quarterback, they got to be able to process the information. And a lot of times quarterbacks are scared because guys are a lot bigger and the rush is coming. And it's a physical issue. They just, I'm just going to throw the ball and I don't want to get hit. I'm just going to throw it. I'd rather you just throw it and just not get hit and not even have to deal with it. I've heard people say it. I've heard a lot of people say that. I'm just going to throw it and I don't want to get hit. And that's the reason. The guys are bigger, guys are faster, can't deal with it, not going to deal with it, I'm done. Heard that a ton. Heard it a ton. Now you go to other positions, you know, running backs and receivers. What do you think it is? Of course it's physical. Linemen, not any good. Defensive linemen, it's physical. It's not mental. It's physical. You've seen all the classic case. Again, I'm not trying to get too much into each individual player, but Mike Mamula. I mean, he is the classic bust. Workout warrior, had a great game in the Hula Bowl or the Aloha Bowl against my Kansas State. Dominated the game. Parlayed that into a workout warrior where he just was off the charts phenomenal at the combine. Off the charts. Still, I'm sure holds records for defensive linemen. Just off the charts. Put him in a game and literally he was road grader material. I mean, guys, offensive line just locking him up, just driving him off the football. You just run right at him. He's like, hey, he can't set an edge. He had speed, but guys in the NFL will figure out, you know what? You can be as fast as you want. You better have some technique. You better have something because this speed stuff ain't going to work. And as soon as I get my hands on you, I'm driving you into the dirt. And that's exactly what offensive tackles did. And the man turned out to be pathetic. Just pathetic. And so it's physical. I mean, if nothing, look at Tony Mandrich. He was literally a walking steroid. Get off the steroids? Horrid. Why? Physically couldn't do it. And then here's the thing. He gets off the steroids, finally gets his act together, and he can play football. It was crazy. That was the one time where it was actually a mental case. The one time where an offensive lineman in football, it was mental. Because he thought he actually had to have the steroids to be able to play. He gets off the steroids, and it turns out he could play. Crazy. It's just crazy. But the football is absolutely, it's physical. Now, again, that was the one time where it was a mental thing, but it is physical. Guys getting beat up, getting smacked around, can't be physical. You see the running backs that come into the league. You've seen them. Can't get 2 yards of carry. You've seen the quarterbacks. I'm throwing this football. Don't hit me. Please don't hit. I'm just throwing it anywhere. All of a sudden, they can process information or are smart as a whip. You get into the NFL. You know what? I'm just going to throw it. I'm just getting rid of it. I don't care. I don't want to get hit. Defensive lineman. Workout warrior. The workout warriors, they came up with that name because of guys that were great at the combine, couldn't put it together when it comes to football. Could not put it together. Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. The one that came up that was really interesting is when the guys they were talking about the quarterbacks that they just want to get rid of the football. They did not want to get hit by the people. I'm like, are you kidding me? You telling me the guys just didn't want to get hit and that's the reason that they checked out? But that was it. That was literally it. Guys just checked out, didn't want to get hit. Quarterback position. That's nuts. You think about that for a second. That is nuts. That's the whole point. That is the whole point. But what are you going to do? Hey, thank you guys again. I appreciate it. This has been a good one. We are having a ton of fun doing this. So as far as I know, I mentioned earlier, get at us, leave us ideas, check us out all over the place. On Twitter, we are at LTB Podcast 1. Again, that's LTB Podcast 1. On Facebook, everybody I think pretty much has an LTB Podcast, so we're good there. And on Instagram, it's literally the same. LTB Podcast. LTB Podcast. So we're out there. Please get at us on each and every spot. Leave suggestions. Get to us. Let us know exactly what you're thinking. We're definitely in the market to hear ideas on what you guys are wanting to hear. I think we're going to come up with a couple of things next where we're going to leave it open to suggestions. That's going to be coming up soon. Going to be coming up very soon, where we open the suggestion box and we make a show based on what you guys are wanting to hear. So, like I said, you got the platforms. Let us know what you guys think. Keep sending the feedback. We enjoy all of it. Until then, thank you for tuning in, and aloha. In the words of my brother Robert, aloha.
Let's Talk Ball is produced by myself, Brian Hanley, and Darren Howard at Mach 1 Productions. Editing, music, intro, graphic design, cover art are also done by our Director of Operations, Darren Howard at Mach 1 Productions. Research, fact-checking by myself, Brian Hanley. The Let's Talk Ball podcast is brought to you by the LTB Network.